Hello, this is Patricia Tiffany Morris, and if you've ever wanted to learn how to blend colors using the Prismacolor colored pencils, stick around. I'm going to demonstrate on one of the pages from our church sermon series that we started back in January called a Model Church Series. I belong to Grace Church along with my husband in Iowa, and it has been a fabulous experience using the live stream worship services, and during this time in COVID-19, we have just felt incredibly blessed to have a leadership team that has allowed us to worship even through the live streaming. So back in January we started, and each week I'll put together the notes from printed out sermon notes from our pastor. So these are not like my words necessarily. I'll put some notes along the side here, some of these notes for application, a few things at the bottom and in between that are my notes, but a lot of these are directly from the sermons. And you can find Grace Church, there's a link in the YouTube notes below for the church, and then the sermon notes as well. But where I've got scribbles and blending, I'm going to show you just a little bit how to do some of those things and how to highlight your notes. So if you wanted to go back and look, what did we talk about on this particular day, that I can go and I can look at these main numbers. And here was a quote that the pastor gave, and I really liked that. This was, of course, February, so long before the situation with the lockdown and such. But these particular notes for the series, a Model Church series, I put together a main, like a page, maybe a title page. So taking each of the sermons, we just picked it up again this morning. So here's a couple more that'll be coming to finish out the book of Thessalonians. So let me get started with some of the tools first of all. And any black marker that you can see on this side where some of this bleeds through, so I'll typically just use one side of a notebook that even with lines, you can use a blank sheet of paper, dots, lines. The main thing is just to highlight what you're studying and what you want to remember from the word and from the sermon. So I use a fabric marker which does not bleed through quite as bad. It does a little bit, but the bleeding through is probably one of my favorite tools. Is a professional waterproof technical pen, and I've used them so well I don't even see the actual name on there, but I'm going to put that in the link. And these are the smaller thinner lines around the edges, and then these are fabulous. These are Faber-Castell artist pens, and they're an India ink waterproof, so this won't fade on you over time with the addition of these and around the edges, and then this main text as well. Sometimes I'll use it's a Sakura Jelly Roll pen, and that's a white pen that you can add marks to a black marker and end up having a fun texture with that. So those are the main tools I use, and then my architecture days from the 80s, I was introduced to this particular type of pencil, and as you can see, some of these are still left from college, and many of them have a number, and that number is very similar to the Copic markers that are out there today to identify that specific type of orange or this specific type of yellow, and those have stayed through the years. So I've chosen some colors that I wanted to use for this, and there are over 100 color choices, and I'm not even sure how many color choices they have these days. So the way I start out is I'll do everything in black and get that all set the way I want it. I'll add some of these little, just extra little pieces, and I'll either use one of these two smaller ink pens. This is smaller than the others, so you'll get an even smaller line if you use this small, and here is 1.5, and that's very similar to this line. So let's see, where would I want to put that? Let's just put it up here. So it's a little bit thinner than this big fat line. The main thing is just having a few varieties of thickness. So once I get that outline, and I draw some boxes, and I'll draw around some of the letters in different type style and do some of these bullets, then I'll get ready to start using the Prismacolors. And since I started with this white here, I'll go ahead and finish that. And if you'll notice, I'm not worrying about it being perfect space. The faster you go, maybe you're concentrating more on the message rather than the exactness of your lines, so that when I'm listening to the sermon, I can just quickly scribble through some of the artsy type things, but my mind is continually on the actual message. So I started here with orange, and you notice how scribbly it is around, and I'll just do a little bit here for you. So I'll start on one side and do a little bit darker, and then leave, and I'm not worrying about if I go outside the edges because I'll cover that up later, and then I'll press a little bit lighter. These Prismacolors have like a wax base, so they are wonderful to blend, but if you press too hard and you put too much pigment on the paper, then you're not able to add anything else to the colors. So like right here, not much else is going to blend to that because I've pressed so hard, but I'm going to scribble the rest of it, and I'll just do this much here. And if you also notice, I'm trying to come across where I would imagine a light or a shadow would be, and some of that's just practice for thinking underneath here I might have a little bit of a shadow underneath the letters. So I'm going a little bit darker underneath. Absolutely, we don't worry too much about that, because if this was part of the message, I would be, in my mind, I would be saying the model church, and or if it's healthy habits, 1 is this, 2 is this, I would be saying those things either out loud, most likely not out loud if I'm actually at church, but I would be repeating those in my mind so that I can remember what has been preached or spoken. When the pastor gives a scripture reference, I will usually stop, I'll lay this down, and then I'll pick the note up, and I will come back here and I will jot in a note. Here is the place, Thessalonica, and the author is Paul. But if some other verse, I would put Acts 17 is one that I might reference. So I would write those in between coloring, or sometimes I even wait till I'm finished with the coloring before finished with the note taking before I add the color. So I'm adding a little bit of yellow along the top edge, maybe not forgetting some of the inside pieces as well. And then I will pick possibly a third color. And you can see already that's hard to add a whole lot of color to. The coloring usually would be start with the light color and then add successively darker because it is harder to cover up the red with a yellow. So now I'm going to add a red at the very bottom edges and just a very little bit, and in a minute you can see what that does. Maybe put a little here. And can you start seeing just a little bit of the blending now? So when I do it up here on the yellow, it has more of an orange look, and when I come under here where the orange was, it is much redder. And this is a light red. I don't even know the color name. This is 326, but there are many, many shades of each of these colors. So, I mean, I could keep going forever on these little details, but here is a couple just with that technique of taking 2 to 3 to 4 colors and a thicker word with a thicker marker in a script lettering, and then taking the thinner pen, either one of these, and then doing the coloring through. The same thing on this, but sometimes I'll take a pencil, and I wanted to show you this too. This is made specifically for Prismacolor, and what you will wreck every sharpener you have if you use another one, so they have a specific one that actually works with this wax based and this particular wood. So another thing you can do is color outside the lines, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to press really hard on this edge and then lift the pressure as I go along and fill that space. So heavy, light, not much room there, heavy, lighter, heavy, lighter. And as much detail as you want. And that's another technique just to give the background a little bit. I'm going to go underneath as well to kind of set it down on the ground. And I'm going heavy against the black line and then just scribbling. You end up with a flat edge here and a rounded edge, and that's very good to use for these type of things. Again, a heavy. And don't worry if you color in there, this is for your benefit. This is for your memorizing, meditating on what the sermon lesson is. So now that is one other technique. I might come back in with a second color and do around this edge. So I've chosen a color that's very similar. And let's see the numbers here. 2 different sets, but 1005 and 920, they're very similar on the color wheel, but this is just a little bit darker. So I'm going to use this, just a smidge in here, and it's adding just a little bit more blue. And then, doesn't matter which direction you go, experiment with what you like. So I'm doing opposite direction here now. And I can see where I'm kind of scratchy at the edge there, so I'm going to stop there. Another thing to do would be just to take a piece of paper and put some scribbles on there to get this rounded. All right, so now I'm going to take one more color, and this is darker yet. Actually, I'm going to find a lighter one. Do a little bit lighter green and finish. And this is sometimes the way I just squiggle it out like that, and it blends the color out and maybe a little more whimsical, but it's definitely fast. Okay, so I'm coming into the other color just a little bit, and just a little bit. And that's making just a little bit of a gradient across the letters. Okay, I'm going to do just a little bit more here. Okay, now you could leave this white, and I'm just going to go ahead and leave it white right now. Prismacolor has a white colored pencil that if you take that over the colors you've already got, that will blend even further and spread out the pigment, blending those colors even further. So, okay, so then here's another way to do, and I'm going to use the word series here, and if I take, let's see, I'm going to start with the darker this time, instead of starting with the lighter, and this will be to fill in underneath script letter. And you can do it like this, where you're just getting a base color across the whole thing, and then come back and just keep adding layers. But I'm pressing hard underneath and then spreading out the pigment as I go along. A little harder again here. And I'm going to be maybe just a little more careful around this, because I want to put another color in here. And you could put the color inside first. But you see, it just doesn't matter which one you do. Just enjoy the creative process. Okay, and you can see where I've left it really light at the bottom, and that's because I'm going to add a little bit of orange to that. I'm going to pull this orange back into here, and I'm going to do the same thing I did inside, but a lot lighter. And not go clear up to the top of the red, or in this case the bottom of the letters, but I'll stay down here and just keep blending. And you could take, if you'll notice, I've kept the lines at an angle like this, and so when you get finished you can see that. If you don't like that and you like this sort of scribbly look here, you can always go the other direction. You can turn your page, your book, and I'll just leave half of it this way, and this way I'm going up farther, aren't I? Okay, so that gives you a little bit of a crosshatch look, where this is just all one direction, so you could either do it this way or this way. Then what I'm going to do is, with one of these colors, I'm just going to come in and just bring just a very little bit of that color. Not hardly putting together, and what color should be here? Let's do a pink. And so I have a really, really bright pink. I have a light pink that's kind of those same areas, but I'm going to start with this here. So I'm blending in the orange with a color that is similar. And I'm not going all the way, just where the orange is, and out just a little bit farther. And you can do this any way you like. I guess I've been doing this for so long I don't think about which one way or the other. Sometimes I'll just start coloring. Now I'm putting the lighter color at the bottom to contrast with this darker red. Leave that brighter. And then the last thing I'm going to do, boy, this is just about, this pencil is just about gone. I use this pink a lot. So then on the top, I'm just going to add just a very little bit. And let's see what else. Thought that was too stark at the bottom, so I'm adding just a little bit on the bottom layer too. I hope I'm not mumbling too terribly bad. And let's see what else. And then either call that good. You could also add another color up in this area, or you can take the colors that you've used here. Let's see which one, probably this one, and continue. And I'll just do just around this so you can see the difference. And I'm pressing hard around in some places and light in others, and then just letting that pressure go to nothing as I go along. Dark, light. Okay, so you could do that where that kind of blends in all the colors, or you could just leave that blank, and I kind of like that. So I think I'll finish a couple of these areas right now. I'm going to blend up in just a little bit, and you can see again where there's a kind of a sharp line. These, once you around in a circle and then twisting the pencil as well will get those hard edges off of there, so it's a lot smoother to use, and it won't leave those really sharp pencil strokes. Of course it does when I press hard like this too. And then I get a little bit sloppy right there. God has made us creative, just like He is, but we are not perfect, and even striving for perfection is wonderful, but knowing that He is the only perfect being helps us to not be dissatisfied with what we create and how we imitate that creativity. And here, because this I kind of messed up, I'm just squiggling. I'm remembering I sure loved Bob Ross, the painter, over the years, even when I was a teenager in high school. I sure loved, just making those mistakes work. Okay, fiddling just a little bit more. All right, here's one more technique, and I think I'll just do it right here, is if you just go in circles and lifting the pencil off the paper as you're going, you can make these kind of bubbles just really fast. And that fills in but doesn't completely cover, and maybe less on one side, and so you've got some sort of a design balance. Okay, so I'm going to stop there and then add just a very little bit of this darker color in those circles. I can either completely circle or I can just do dots. And then one last thing, I like this orange color, so I'm going to do these orange. Same thing, just swiggling around, and some of them are circles, some of them are just scratchings. Okay, so that is one way you can do. If I look up here in these two little lines I made, I'm going to take, I'm not sure I have a thought to why I choose the orange over anything else, except that this is pretty heavy and it's here. So okay, and let's see, I've got some pink here. I have no pink up at the top. Turn that again. And do darker and circles, scratches. Just keep blending it however you like it. And then the last thing is I've got some yellow here, and some of these borders and boxes I will take and do kind of a, let's say, a shadow. And if you have your pencil not real pointed sharp, but so that it's a flat edge, these Prismacolors just lay down the pencil. I have not been able to do this with any other kind of colored pencils. And you can find these at Hobby Lobby and other craft stores, as well as online. I wish I owned stock in these, because these are just love working with these colored pencils. And okay, so now I'm just scribbling just to bring that yellow around, and I'm starting on this other box, and I'm leaving the white space around some of these words. Pressing harder where I want it. Darker. And let's see, let's go a little here. It's another, okay, so this side much lighter, and then I need one more color here. That's, I could take that color and make it really dark, but I think I'm going to add the orange just right at the edge on top of the yellow. And I don't know how that looks in the video, but does that look a little like a drop shadow? And you have to make some choices when you come around words, how much of that you want to show. And I'm going to add just a little more of the yellow to make that even darker. And then I just said I left white around that, and then I just colored right over it. Okay, so sometimes leaving something white helps so it doesn't feel so cluttered. I have a really bad habit of coloring everything and completely saturating page. So let's see, I'm going to use this really super almost neon yellow so that it's got just a smidge of color, but it's going to be mostly white. Hope you can see that yellow. I'll use it in a couple other places, and you can see where it is almost a neon. You can see it a little bit there. And when you press really dark, it is. Number 435, if you like these pencils, and this particular one appeals to me because it gives kind of that fluorescent yellow highlighter look through. Okay, so I've got just a little bit more down here. Another, these little bits here, and a box for each of the sermon dates. No guidelines, no highlights. Doesn't matter, one's a little bit smaller. This bothers me when I look at it, and so what I'm going to end up doing is take that little bit bigger and just make them off on purpose. And so if I make them irregular on purpose, then that makes them a little straighter to the eye. Okay, so here I'm going to pick the orange for the center, and I want that to stand out that these are my sermon dates, and I'm going to hunch for those when I go back here and look for the actual days. I'll be able to find, this is January 12th, here's January 12th, and this one I am choosing to have this particular series name and the circles around the edges, and to make each of the sermon notes within the series have some common elements. So I redid the notes for this week, listened to the sermon again, and caught a few extra verses that were important as I was listening to it. And then again, my notes on the side here, which don't actually have here, but would you make a comment in the comment section if you'd like to see more of these real-time coloring sketches? And I'll try to finish this up, adding just a little bit of the light red to the orange. And because I've scribbled out of the edge there, I'm going to take this same red and a little heavier on one side, just fill in the space. And then I'm going to take this red and make a drop shadow here. And at the bottom of each of these arrows. I guess they're not arrows, are they? Triangles. Okay, and then finish it off with the scribbles again to match the top. I'm gonna bring this right up to this box and put the orange so then we'll end up with a double border around the edge of the scripture passage that we're studying. And here, I just told you I have a hard time leaving the white space, and here I'm coloring it up. Okay, so this is the first time I've done a video where I'm talking and coloring. It's quite interesting and challenging. I'm going to take this yellow around each of these boxes here. And then going right over top of the orange. It's darker, doesn't matter. And there we go. And I'm pretty sure there'll be a couple more because we haven't gotten to 1 Thessalonians 5 yet. Oh, I might, let's see, this will be good. I'll do, in any sort of shape or scribble or extra little. Okay, one more thing you can do is after you've done the coloring, you can come back in here and add some black, very thin, on top of that. This will wear down your pens a little quicker, but it adds an extra texture to the page. Make this look like a band. I'm not sure what it's called. And just a little extra here for, and then now we're just taking the pen and scribbling top. All right, and one last thing, I'm going to take this green color and put it down here so that this piece right here doesn't get lost. And if it was in, let's see, if it was in one of these, I've got the colors that kind of come throughout the orange that are similar, like these are the verses and scripture references in orange, and then I take these little triangle sort of embellishments off the edge and make those orange. These are each 1, 2, 3. These are each highlighted the same, colored the same. So I need just a little more green. So I have Grace, the Model Church series. So now I'm going to take and I'm going to do this green, bluish green, pressing a little harder in the space where it's not the words, and lighter across the letters. And then because I have 2 or 3 colors there, I'm going to do the same thing here. And I could come in here and highlight that, but this is a small space, so just adding your extra colors and varying the pressure, you're going to get a similar look. So here when I'm done here. And lastly, the white to lighten up just a few places. Okay, and now you see the black has gotten kind of dark and muted with this white. So I'm going to take that same marker and I'll go back over that. That's a look if you like the white over top of it, but I'd rather make that stand out since this is my sort of table of contents. And take that thicker marker however you like. I might regret that when I did that, so okay. I don't think I'll do anything more other than one other little technique that I like is to do these stripes with vertical lines and then take the colors that are on your page and just add, you know, what you would call this checkered, not really checkered, striped, and there we go, striped pattern, and just randomly put the colors that you have throughout your, and that looks so much like that one that I won't do too many of these. Okay, and we're going to make sure we add the orange in and the red, and I can see where this is not a very sharp edge, so if it was a little sharper I'd stay in the lines a little bit better, but we're not worried about staying in the lines. So then I do have some pink, So let's do pink wherever there's 2 left, and then red will fill in at the very last. And there, there, and the red. You could leave some of them white. All right, so that is it. So enjoy coloring and making your experience for worship just a sweet, sweet time. Enjoy.